Robert Souter was sent to jail for a minimum of 3 years by Judge John Goldwyn, who had this to say about the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society.
The church authorities took it upon themselves to act as if they were the civil authorities, which they had no right to do. This matter was not reported to the police, as it should have been, and I'm surprised that the police have not taken any action against the church authorities. I hope they will do so. The state has the responsibility of protecting young people, and all citizens have a serious moral responsibility to assist it in doing so. I cannot criticise the church sufficiently seriously for not having reported this matter.
60,000 in Australia. They're the Jehovah's Witnesses, and some of you will find them on your doorstep today, devoutly preaching their message and pressing their literature. But this morning you're going to meet some other witnesses with a very different message. They're victims of child abuse at the hands of Jehovah's Witnesses, and they accuse the church of not only covering up their complaints, but actively frustrating police investigations. For years, a curtain of silence and obstruction has protected pedophiles within the ranks of the Jehovah's Witnesses. Now that curtain has been drawn aside by the victims and by former elders, whose testimony implicates yet another church in this growing scandal. Our cover story is reported by Graham Davis.
Over the past few years, the Catholic and Anglican churches have been forced to confront the presence of child abusers in the clergy and to stop blaming the abused for their own violation. Not so the Jehovah's Witnesses. They continue to shelter pedophiles and even protect them by imposing an impossible burden of proof on the children they molest. 3 years ago, Sunday exposed the extent of child abuse within the Jehovah's Witnesses, but the church is still ignoring the problem, still accusing the victims of being the real sinners. Sunday has now uncovered fresh evidence of incest by a church elder and found a convicted pedophile in another congregation who's again able to prey on young people. Graham Davis won an award for his 2002 exposure of the Jehovah's Witnesses, and he now continues his investigation.
Welcome back to 10 News. The Child Abuse Royal Commission has exposed what might be the worst cultural sexual abuse and cover-up within a church that we've ever seen. That church is the Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, there were claims today that 1,000 paedophiles were protected, evidence against them deliberately destroyed, and not even a single case ever referred to the police. Daniel Sutton has the story.
Their World Convention last year may have filled a Melbourne footy stadium, but Australia only has about 70,000 Jehovah's Witnesses. Still, when the Royal Commission came knocking, it discovered the church also has a staggering 1,006 files on alleged pedophiles within its flock. And what's worse,
not one was reported by the church to secular authorities.
The church's policy not to call police, but ask elders to investigate. One abuse survivor says that made her feel ashamed.
I found the experience of reporting my abuse to a room full of men, including the man who had abused me, very distressing.
Max Hawley was the elder in charge of her case. He took notes but destroyed them to protect church wives.
And would you do the same thing today if someone came and reported to you a serious allegation of sexual assault? Would you destroy any notes?
Yes, that's our practice.
To take action, the church demanded either a confession or the testimony of 2 witnesses, a policy that meant 125 complaints never proceeded.
For engaging in child sexual abuse, members can be disfellowshipped from the church. But the inquiry heard today of the 400 or so alleged pedophiles kicked out of the Jehovah's Witnesses, more than half were subsequently allowed back in.
The Royal Commission says church elders may have concealed serious offences and could now face charges themselves. Daniel Sutton, 10 Eyewitness News.
Now, the Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sexual Abuse has turned its attention today to the current policies and procedures of Jehovah's Witnesses. Nicole Shuttle has been at the inquiry. She joins us live now. Nicole, take us through what the inquiry has heard so far today.
Well, the Royal Commission is looking at how the Jehovah's Witnesses Church responded to its recommendations after a hearing which looked at the experiences of some survivors of sexual abuse back in 2015. And we heard that there are, in fact, 67,000 members of the church across more than 800 congregations in Australia. Now, its governing body is based in the United States, and because of that, the Commission has no powers to compel any of the big guns, so to speak, to come and give evidence. It did request that authorities from the US appear at these hearings either in person or via video link, but they declined. However, there were two senior church officials questioned today, and they're based in Australia, and they were asked about a number of issues, including changes to church laws, which now mean that victims are not required to confront their abuser, and also the church's refusal to abolish what's known as the two-witness rule, which means that if a perpetrator doesn't confess to child abuse, then two eyewitnesses are required. And Terence O'Brien from the Jehovah's Witnesses faced some quite intense questioning about this issue, including from the chair of the Royal Commission himself, Justice Peter McClellan, who said that really this puts survivors of child abuse in a terrible position if the organisation itself won't accept that abuse has occurred in the absence of a confession and two witnesses. And Mr O'Brien said that it's not a case of the church disbelieving survivors, but went on to say under questioning that scripturally the church cannot accept allegations if the survivor doesn't go to civil authorities, if there is no confession, and in fact if there are not two eyewitnesses. So that was really the focus of the evidence about the Jehovah's Witnesses for the morning session.
What else has happened since the last hearing involving the Jehovah's Witness?
It's quite interesting. Since the hearing in 2015, the Royal Commission has received more than 1,000 items of correspondence from people right around the world. We're talking North America, Brazil, Europe, New Zealand, and these are people who are overwhelmingly critical of the Jehovah's Witnesses' institutional response to child sexual abuse, and they're calling for significant changes within the church. We heard that since the last hearing, 17 fresh allegations of child sexual abuse have emerged, and of those, 15 were reported to police. The other two were not reported because the adult survivors declined to go to the authorities.
Nicole Chettle in Sydney, thank you.